There is no telling what people are up to behind closed doors when no one is watching. But when it comes to the Hollywood stars on this list, there is no doubt that the golden age of Hollywood had its fair share of nastiness and pure lust. From being intimate with both men and women, to openly admitting seeking help from the nympho addiction, some of these stars knew they had a problem, but for others, they hid behind the veil of marriage. Regardless, they all had the same thing in common. They simply could not resist a good time in the sheets. Pamela Anderson. This amazing star has never been one to hold back when it comes to talking about her love life. Back in her younger days, she admitted in an interview that her libido was, in her words, uncontrollable. And honestly, it's not hard to see why people took notice. She wasn't just famous for her role on Baywatch, but also for her high-profile relationships with rock stars like Tommy Lee and Kid Rock. Even as she got older, Pamela didn't shy away from the subject. She embraced her image as a sensual symbol and kept things playful, sharing that she still enjoyed adding a little spice to her relationships. Her openness about physical intimacy and love has kept her in the spotlight as one of the most talked-about stars when it comes to libido. But here's the thing. Pamela's carefree and unapologetic attitude about her sexuality isn't just a phase or an act. It's been a core part of who she is from the start. She's never let society's expectations box her in, and that's probably why fans have always been so fascinated by her. Love her or not, you've got to admit, Pamela Anderson has always danced to the beat of her own drum. Vivien Leigh. She was far more complex than the glamorous image she portrayed on screen as Scarlett O'Hara. Beneath the surface of her dazzling career lay a life filled with personal struggles, heartbreak, and battles that would have overwhelmed many. Her relationships were often a focal point for public gossip, particularly her well-known affairs with co-stars like Robert Taylor and Peter Finch, even during her marriage to Laurence Olivier. While the tabloids painted her as scandalous, the truth of her life was far more nuanced and deeply human. Vivien's real challenge wasn't the judgment of others. It was the battle within herself. She suffered from bipolar disorder, a condition that was poorly understood at the time. It led to extreme mood swings that impacted her relationships, career, and overall well-being. Her struggles became even more pronounced after a devastating miscarriage in 1945, an event that many believe intensified her emotional pain and left scars that never fully healed. Her health challenges didn't stop there. The book, Reframing Vivien Leigh, details how she suffered from illnesses throughout her life, which added another layer of difficulty to an already turbulent existence. These health issues, along with the rumors and speculation they stirred, created an image of a troubled star in the public eye. But behind the headlines was a woman fighting battles most would never understand. Despite it all, Vivien remained remarkably resilient. She continued to pour herself into her craft, delivering performances that captivated audiences and cemented her place in cinematic history. On stage and screen, she exuded a magnetic presence that few could match, even as she wrestled with her inner demons. Elizabeth Taylor. Her love life was always making headlines, and for good reason. She got married 8 times, to 7 different men, and didn't hold back when it came to following her heart. The press loved to slap labels on her, calling her everything from unpredictable to wild, especially when her romance with Richard Burton hit the scene. That relationship was Hollywood drama at its peak. Both Elizabeth and Richard were married to other people when their affair started, which only added fuel to the media frenzy. But their connection was undeniable, and their on-again, off-again romance became one of the most talked-about love stories of all time. They had fiery arguments, grand reunions, and moments so passionate they could have been straight out of one of their movies. The thing about Elizabeth, though, is she never apologized for living her life the way she wanted. She once said, "I don't regret anything I've ever done," and she meant it. She wasn't about to let public opinion dictate how she lived or who she loved. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature. She loved deeply, made bold choices, and owned every moment of it. That's what made her unforgettable, not just her beauty or talent, but the way she lived life on her terms. Rita Hayworth. Her love life was just as adventurous as her Hollywood career. Known for her beauty and elegance, she had a magnetic charm that made her one of the most sought-after stars of her time. But Rita's personal life was as dramatic as any of her films, filled with passion, heartbreak, and headline-making romances. She was married 5 times, each relationship capturing public attention in its own way. Her second husband, Orson Welles, was a creative genius, best known for Citizen Kane. Together, they were seen as a power couple, blending Hollywood glamour with artistic brilliance. But their marriage was far from perfect, and like many of her relationships, it didn't last. Then came Prince Ali Khan, the dashing son of the Aga Khan. Their affair caused an international stir. Rita was already a massive star, and Ali was one of the most eligible bachelors in the world. When they got married, it seemed like a real-life fairy tale, the movie star and the prince. But even that storybook romance had its troubles. Their relationship was marked by intense highs and lows, and they eventually divorced. Rita wasn't just someone who fell in love. She dove headfirst into it, living with passion and following her heart wherever it led her. But that kind of intensity came with its challenges. She once said, "Every man I knew fell in love with Gilda and woke up with me," referring to her famous role in the movie Gilda. It was a bittersweet reflection on how people often saw her as the glamorous character on screen rather than the real woman behind it. Beyond the rumors and gossip, Rita Hayworth was a deeply human figure. She loved fiercely and openly, and she carried herself with grace even when things didn't work out. While her personal life was far from smooth, it's also what made her so relatable. Warren Beatty. While his career took off after the Golden Age, his romantic life was just as much a part of his legend as his acting. He was known for dating some of the biggest stars of the time, with his list of lovers reportedly numbering in the hundreds. Beatty didn't just have a few flings. He was deeply involved with many women, including major names like Natalie Wood, Julie Christie, and even Madonna in the 80s. His charm and looks kept him in the headlines, but it was his personality that really fueled the gossip. Beatty had a reputation for being confident and captivating, always able to win over whoever he set his sights on. His romantic relationships often became public spectacles, and he was rarely far from the tabloids. For years, he seemed to live in the spotlight, balancing his acting career with a relentless pursuit of romance. Despite his womanizing reputation, Beatty eventually settled down with actress Annette Bening, a move that surprised many who had grown used to his bachelor lifestyle. But even then, the stories of his past relationships continued to follow him, ensuring that his place in Hollywood history was as much about his personal life as it was about his films. Marlon Brando. Known not just for his incredible acting, but also for his wild, unpredictable love life. With his smoldering looks and undeniable talent, Brando quickly became a heartthrob, but his personal life was as intense as his performances on screen. He had numerous relationships with both men and women, making headlines for his openness and rebellious nature. Brando wasn't shy about his romantic interests, and over the years he fathered 11 children with different partners. His love life was as complicated and unpredictable as his roles, with many ups and downs. From his passionate relationships to his unorthodox lifestyle, Brando lived life on his own terms, constantly challenging Hollywood norms. Despite his many romantic entanglements, Brando was known for being deeply private about his personal affairs, leaving many details about his relationships to speculation. Still, his love life became as much a part of his legendary status as his groundbreaking performances, proving that he was not only a force on screen but off it too. Clark Gable. Often called the King of Hollywood, he was just as well known for his off-screen romantic life as he was for his iconic film roles. With his charm, good looks, and rugged appeal, Gable captured the hearts of women both on and off the screen. He was married 5 times, with each marriage making headlines in its own right. But it was his extramarital affair with actress Loretta Young that truly made waves. Their relationship resulted in a secret love child, a scandal that Hollywood tried to keep under wraps. Despite their affair happening while they were both married to other people, Young kept the child's existence a secret for many years, with Gable only acknowledging his daughter much later in life. This secret love affair and its fallout added a layer of complexity to Gable's otherwise polished public image. Gable's love life was often filled with drama, but it only added to the mystique of his public persona. His relationships were just as intense as his famous roles, and the stories behind them became as much a part of his life as the films that made him a legend. Zsa Zsa Gabor. A lot of people will go to great lengths to hide who they really are, especially when the rest of the world around them will not accept it. But not Zsa Zsa Gabor. This woman was bold, fearless, and unapologetic about her free-spirited lifestyle. With a personal life that kept the tabloids buzzing and known for her 9 marriages, she certainly wasn't shy about her love life. Each of her marriages seemed to be more high-profile than the last, and her relationships were often just as public. But it wasn't just her marriages that had people talking. Her flirtatious personality and quick wit made her one of Hollywood's most charming and talked-about stars. Gabor loved the attention, and she knew how to work the spotlight. Her reputation as a woman who was always in search of love and excitement was solidified by the countless rumored affairs and passionate relationships she had over the years. Zsa Zsa made no apologies for the way she lived her life, and she leaned into her role as a woman who refused to follow society's rules. Much like many other actresses of her time, Gabor was labeled by the public as a nymphomaniac, a term that reflected society's discomfort with women who openly expressed their desires. But in many ways, she and others like her were challenging the strict and often unfair expectations placed on women during Hollywood's golden age. They weren't just breaking hearts, they were breaking down barriers, showing that women could have control over their love lives and reject the conventional norms that were expected of them. Robert Mitchum. If there were ever a male version of Gabor, this would be him, just like her. Robert wasn't too keen on listening to what other people thought about him, and he lived his life regardless. He was the ultimate tough guy on screen, known for his gritty roles in noir films and westerns. But off-screen, his life was just as intense. Mitchum didn't just play bad boys, he lived like one too. He had a rebellious streak that made him a bit of a Hollywood maverick, and his personal life was filled with rumors of numerous affairs. Even though Mitchum was married for decades to his wife, Dorothy, his extramarital relationships were widely talked about. His rugged charm and laid-back attitude made him irresistible, and Hollywood couldn't help but be fascinated by his romantic entanglements. Mitchum didn't care much for the spotlight, but his love life added to the mystique of his public persona, with whispers about his love affairs and escapades never far from the tabloids. In a time when many actors tried to keep their personal lives under wraps, Mitchum's rebellious nature meant he was never one to follow the rules, whether in his roles or his relationships. His ability to balance a high-profile career with a secretive love life only made him more intriguing to the public, further cementing his legacy as one of Hollywood's most complicated and charismatic stars. Marilyn Monroe. We all know Monroe, don't we? So many things have been associated with her name: beauty, style, talent. But today, we will talk about her more intimate nature. She was Hollywood's ultimate bombshell, right? But her life off-screen was far from perfect. The media loved to paint her as a nymphomaniac because of her string of high-profile relationships, like her marriages to Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller. And of course, there were the infamous rumors about her affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. All of that gossip made her love life a constant headline. But what the public didn't really see was how much deeper her struggles went. Marilyn wasn't just looking for love. She was emotionally vulnerable, craving acceptance, and battling inner demons that nobody really understood. Her tragic demise at just 36 in 1962 left more questions than answers about who she truly was. Marilyn might have been this glamorous, larger-than-life figure on screen, but in real life, she was one of Hollywood's most misunderstood stars. Her story is filled with mystery, and even today she remains an iconic figure, both admired and misjudged. Angelina Jolie. With a face that can turn heads and eyes that make you freeze in your boots, Angelina Jolie certainly has earned her place on this list. Her marriage to Billy Bob Thornton was the stuff of legend. Remember when they wore vials of each other's blood around their necks? It was a relationship that constantly made headlines, especially since they were so open about their love life, often discussing it in interviews. Jolie's relationships have always sparked a lot of attention, largely because of her undeniable chemistry with her partners. Former lovers have shared stories about her adventurous side, like her love of incorporating knives into her intimate moments, which only added fuel to the media fire. While these days, Jolie focuses more on humanitarian work and raising her kids, her earlier reputation as a passionate, wild lover still follows her. That part of her story has become just as much a part of her public image as her acting career. Lana Turner. Her love life was just as dramatic as the roles she played on screen. With 7 marriages and countless affairs, she built a reputation for being unable to resist romance. She had high-profile relationships with men like Tyrone Power and Howard Hughes, but it was her scandalous affair with gangster Johnny Stompanato that really grabbed the tabloids' attention. Their relationship took a dark turn when, in 1958, Lana's teenage daughter Cheryl Crane stabbed Stompanato to death, ending a story filled with passion and violence. The media had a field day painting Lana as a woman whose love life led to tragedy. She was often labeled a nymphomaniac, a tag that stuck with her for years. But despite everything, Lana lived life on her own terms. She may have faced heartbreak and public judgment, but she never let that stop her from seeking love and living in the spotlight, even if it meant living through the consequences of her passionate choices. Tallulah Bankhead. She was loud, unapologetically bold, and never afraid to go after what she wanted. In an era when women were expected to fit into neat little boxes, Tallulah smashed every stereotype with ease. One of the things that really made her stand out was her open bisexuality. This was shocking to a lot of people at the time, especially since it wasn't something anyone openly talked about back then. But Tallulah didn't hide it. She had passionate love affairs with both men and women, with famous names like actor Gary Cooper and singer Billie Holiday being among her lovers. She didn't just have relationships, she lived them out loud, and everyone knew about it. Her love life wasn't some private affair, it was part of her public persona. She was so open about it that people couldn't help but talk about her. One of her most famous quotes was, "My father warned me about men and booze, but he never said a word about women and cocaine." It's clear she had no intention of apologizing for her wild ways, and she lived exactly how she wanted to, without a care in the world about what others thought. The press, of course, loved to make her the subject of gossip, often labeling her a nymphomaniac because of her adventurous love life. But Tallulah didn't let those labels stick. To her, she was just being herself, living free, wild, and in the moment, without caring what anyone thought. She was unapologetic, and that's part of what made her so fascinating to everyone around her. Sheen. Known for living life on the edge, his history of relationships with hundreds of women, including porn stars and escorts, Charlie became public long before the shocking revelation of his HIV diagnosis in 2015. Sheen's wild ways weren't exactly a secret. His personal life was often a topic of conversation, with stories about his outrageous parties, erratic behavior, and infamous scandals filling the tabloids for years. Even after learning of his HIV diagnosis, Sheen didn't slow down. He continued living the same hedonistic lifestyle, partying hard and engaging in reckless behavior despite the consequences. This led to massive public backlash, with many criticizing him for not taking his health and responsibilities seriously. But even with all the controversy, Sheen remained one of the most talked about figures in Hollywood. His behavior often overshadowed his acting career, but he was still able to stay relevant, proving just how much controversy seemed to follow him wherever he went. Despite all the ups and downs, Charlie Sheen's name was always in the spotlight. Whether it was for his role in 2.5 Men, his dramatic breakdowns, or his headline-grabbing personal life, Sheen was one of those celebrities who couldn't escape the constant buzz around him. Good or bad, His story is a prime example of how scandal and fame often go hand in hand in the world of Hollywood. Michael Douglas. He was one of Hollywood's biggest stars and shocked fans in the 1990s when he admitted to seeking treatment for bedroom addiction. Known for his smooth charm and being a ladies' man, Douglas had always been in the public eye for his high-profile relationships and romantic escapades. His first marriage ended in part because of his infidelity, and the tabloids were filled with stories about his flings. It seemed like his personal life was just as dramatic as his Hollywood career. But over time, Douglas opened up about his struggles. In the 1990s, he revealed that his issues went beyond just the thrill of being with women. It was more complex than that. He admitted that his addiction was just a part of a bigger picture of personal challenges he was facing, and he made the brave decision to seek help. This was a side of Douglas fans had never really seen, and it showed a more vulnerable, honest side of the actor. Through all of this, Douglas found stability in his marriage to actress Catherine Zeta-Jones. She stood by him through thick and thin, including some of the toughest moments in his life. When he was diagnosed with throat cancer, it was Catherine's support that helped him fight through it. Their relationship proved to be a rock for him, and it gave him a foundation he hadn't had before. Despite the public struggles and battles, Michael Douglas didn't let those define him. His career continued to thrive, with him taking on major roles and continuing to cement his place as a Hollywood icon. It was clear that while his personal battles had been tough, they didn't overshadow his talent or his legacy in the entertainment world. He became an example of someone who could overcome their demons and still come out on top, proving that everyone has their challenges, but it doesn't have to define who you are or what you do.